From a happy life inside the royal palace to almost complete devastation and possibly even death, the shocking secrets of Sheikh Mohammed reveal how his marriage with Princess Haya turned out to be like a spy novel. This video looks at how the cunning and wealthy nature of Sheikh Mohammed almost managed to derail a trial in the biggest court in London. What exactly happened? How did it happen? And what was the fallout? Princess Haya. Princess Haya is arguably the most famous wife of Sheikh Mohammed at this point. The two met in early 2002, and they would tie the knot in a somewhat lavish wedding. Haya was more of a showman and public figure than the other wives of the Sheikh, and she would often be treated to many of the more eccentric pleasures that Dubai had to offer. However, during their marriage, Haya had to bear witness to some of the most devastating and gruesome situations inside the palace. She would have to see wife after wife being chased from the palace once they had a little feud with the Sheikh, whilst having their children stripped from them and simply being cast aside. It was this devastation that would trigger something inside Haya, and she understood that if she ever defied what the Sheikh said, she would end up exactly the same. The princess didn't have any intentions of losing her children, and she always wanted to make sure she could raise and protect them. You see, whenever the Sheikh banished someone from the palace, he would take away their children and give them to the First Lady of Dubai, Sheikha Hind. Hind has been part of the royal family all her life, and she was even born into the Al Maktoum family. Hind would become the wife who always remains loyal to the Sheikh and doesn't disobey any of his orders. However, Haya, on the other hand, knew that her time inside the palace was coming to a close and she wanted out. However, many women have tried to escape the clutches of the Sheikh, only to find themselves either whisked back to Zabil Palace or finding themselves in prison. Haya decided that it was time, and she boarded a private jet to London with a couple of $1 million as a way to help her. Here, she immediately approached the court system for protection, explaining her situation and eventually hiring one of the top UK-based lawyers in the custody battle for her children. It was during this court case that many of the vicious rumors were proven true and some of these secrets came to life. However, Sheikh Mohammed had repeatedly attempted to stop this trial, and he even wanted to keep it from the public eye, something that was never going to happen due to the massive international interest surrounding the situation. The Sheikh would eventually turn to one of the most dastardly tricks in the book, hiring a bunch of hackers who would use Israeli intelligence hacking software called Pegasus in an attempt to stop this situation. So what exactly happened? The spy software scandal. Many suspect that the same spyware was used when Princess Latifa also made her daring escape from the palace. She would later be found on a yacht outside India before she was whisked back to the palace, and she would find herself in prison for a while. You see, the court proceedings were heavily stacked in favor of Haya at the time. In fact, public support poured out for the princess, and many wanted her to win the trial. Sheikh Mohammed understood that he was not the favorite of the public and that he had to do something to turn the court rulings in his favor. The only way to do so would be to find dirt on those who are accusing the Sheikh. Among those hacked were not only the personal devices of Princess Haya, but also that of her lawyer, Fiona Shackleton, who sits in the House of Lords and was assisting Haya with the case. In fact, no one knew of the spyware situation until Cherie Bell, who works with the Israeli NSO group, tipped them off. During the investigation that ensued, it was found that the phone of Princess Haya had been hacked no less than 11 times. The orders for these hackings came directly from Sheikh Mohammed, something the Sheikh himself still denies to this day. This would turn the case on its head and also play a major part in the court to show that the man was indeed trying to destroy the life of Haya. His attempts to hack law officials also proved to be one of the most damaging things ever, and he would allow the world to see that he was indeed a massive risk to the safety of the princess and her children. As the proceedings drew to a close, the court awarded Princess Haya a divorce settlement, which included more than $708 million, most of which the court told her would be used as part of her protection. She would eventually buy a home outside of London in the countryside as a way of protecting herself and her children. However, the sheik also landed near her previous residence with a helicopter, in which she had been threatened as well. This would make it hard to protect the woman from Sheikh Mohammed and his agents. Most importantly, it was the wealth of the sheik that made it incredibly hard for the princess to escape from his clutches. You see, the sheik and his agents tried to buy a £30 million property that was located next door to where Princess Haya is living. This would not happen, and the UK courts did everything in their power to make sure that it doesn't happen. Thanks to this, Judge McFarlane created a 100-meter exclusion zone around her property and another 1,000-foot no-fly zone above it to protect her from any possible helicopters that could land. This meant that the only way the sheik could access the property would be through the outer perimeter, which had been fortified and designed to have bodyguards protecting the princess around the clock. Bear in mind that this situation comes a few months after the same British court found that the sheik was indeed guilty of the abduction of two of his daughters. The case was labeled as a situation where the ruler would intimidate those around him to get his way. The fallout. For the ruler of Dubai, nothing mattered, as he was actually untouchable. He still has one of the most expensive horse stables in London and is a regular fan of horse racing. Thanks to many of his companies, he also owns plenty of property in the United Kingdom, which does give him some form of control and power. At the end of the proceedings, Haya would win full custody of her children and be awarded more than $700 million in the divorce settlement. Even though the sheik had been guilty of this hacking scandal, his legal team still argued that the British court had no legal jurisdiction to rule on a foreign act of state. This would be rejected by both the High Court and the Court of Appeal, and the sheik would be found guilty of this transgression. Whilst the public situation surrounding the UAE and London has not changed, there is definitely a couple of trust issues between the parties. This situation is not mentioned often, and whilst Queen Elizabeth was still alive, she did have quite a good relationship with Sheikh Mohammed. In fact, it doesn't seem like this is bothering him in the slightest. To this day, many people still visit Dubai in the royal palace seeking the counsel of the sheik. He is often described as one of the wisest men in the Arab world and always happy to help some of his fellow leaders. Besides all this, the princess now seems to be safe, and many believe that she has overcome these challenges posed by the sheik. Unlike many of the other princesses, who have had to endure imprisonment and even being banished from the palace, Haya is the one who has made it. It could partially be thanks to her ties with the King of Jordan as well. But if you enjoy these shocking secrets, make sure to watch the next video to find out what the Pandora Papers revealed about the shoddy dealings of the sheik.